Hello, welcome back to Seawolf's Den. I am Crafting Ron.
This is a second video in a series of my preparation for
Mythic and some of the games I am running, and I keep coming up with new crafts in my head. I don't know if I'm going to use all of them at the convention, but at the same time, I'm going to start making videos. Here you see the supplies I've laid out for a shipwreck. This is a piece of wood that's going to be the base. I got to cut around it, but that's going to be part of the terrain. That's a Play-Doh base from one of my kids' old toys that I cut up. I got some pictures of when I cut it. Halloween skeleton of a mermaid. This is its tail. I'll probably lay that out as probably something embedded in that foam. And then this is the boat, which is just a sand toy, kind of like the USS Minnow for those Gen Xers that know what that is. I'll probably set it up in there. Just another boat I might use somewhere, but that's the plan. I'm also printing out some shipwrecks, because part of my 80s Savage Worlds game takes place off the coast of Florida and in amongst some islands, and I wanted some shipwrecks. That's the start of a shipwreck craft.
There was not a lot to these shipwrecks, really. They're not any different than any other scatter terrain I've done or anyone else has done. I didn't film a lot of my progress on these, mostly because I was so busy with them and other crafting. So I simply took some pictures along the way and planned to narrate it like this. I first created the bases out of the stiff MDF wood I had left over from a door I'd bought at Lowe's. I laid things out on each base and then started gluing things with some hot glue and nailing them down. I also carved up some packing foam for stones and boulders. Next, I painted each one with a mixture of Mod Podge and black paint to base it out, and then dusted the whole thing with construction sand. As I said before, I printed 3 shipwrecks out from Thingiverse, link below. Someone rendered these and posted them as Fallout Shipwreck, but they serve my purpose pretty well. I scaled them to what I guessed was the proper size for 28mm miniature scale with a little help from AI. The one called Pleasure Craft looked like it was partially submerged, so I made that terrain piece look more like it was in water. Instead of Mod Podge and sand, I used hot glue, spray paint, base, and various blue paints to get the water effect. For all the 3D prints, to get the proper scale, I had to cut the models in half. In some, you can see the seam where I cut them. Then I printed them out in resin because my PLA printer was giving me trouble, and then glued them together. With the sand toy, I cut an area off the hull and glued it to the base with the Play-Doh piece, and then covered that up with paint and sand. I didn't use the mermaid skeleton tail on that piece, but instead put it on another shipwreck. I painted them up by sponging on a lot of browns and tans and sienna tones to give it a very dirty look. The boats were based out in gray, then added various browns to give it a rusty look. Then I dry brushed everything with a country grade to let the details pop. I finally sprayed it with what I thought was a flat, clear coat, but for some reason or another, it ended up drying with a silky sheen, but that was okay because it gave more of a wet look. Overall, I'm reasonably pleased with them. I think the mermaid tail could have been done a little bit better. Perhaps put on a larger piece of foam and given it a more natural look, but I consider all these table ready. They worked for what I needed, and it did add up to the overall table experience. I wanted to give the players some features they could explore and perhaps salvage parts from to create the booby traps they needed, because their island was going to be assaulted. So that's about it.
Until next time, seek the wolf in thyself.